guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So the goal of today's video is for me to get through the video before these space buns fall apart. Okay, so today's story is a weird crime type story, and I've read a bunch of articles and it seems like there's no real consensus as to who's lying, who's telling the truth. We'll get into it, but all I'm saying is it's confusing, and if you want a story with closure, this is not it. Couple accused of neglect say adopted Ukrainian daughter was actually adult dwarf running a scam. So already this is an overwhelming title just because there's so many things: neglect, adoption, scam. What is going on? Christine and Michael Barnett say Natalia is an adult dwarf and a diagnosed psychopath and sociopath. An Indiana mother charged last week along with her ex-husband with neglect after allegedly relocating to Canada without their disabled 10-year-old daughter claims the girl was actually an adult who deceived them about her age. That was a mouthful. So the gist is they adopted a Ukrainian girl. Apparently she's not a girl, but she's a woman, and she's also a psychopath and sociopath, according to the parents anyway. Christine Barnett diverted the blame to Natalia, the child both she and her former husband, Michael Barnett, adopted from Ukraine back in November 2010 in an interview with Indiana station Wish TV, calling the girl a grown-up who was a quote-unquote diagnosed psychopath and sociopath. The mother then told the station over Facebook that the adoption of Natalia was a quote-unquote scam, and she'd been an adult the entire time she's known her, Wish reported. Natalia suffers from a dwarfism called, I don't know how to pronounce this, dysplasia congenita, which affects the bones and limits growth, according to the outlet. On Tuesday, following nationwide coverage of the accusations against both Barnett parents, warrants were issued for Michael and Christine Barnett, and both appeared in Tippecanoe County Superior Court. Each was released the following day after posting a $5,000 surety bond and $500 cash, court records show. Oxygen.com's attempts to reach the parents or their attorneys were unsuccessful. Prior to Christine being formally arraigned, she supplied Wish TV with a letter purportedly composed by Michael Barnett's Indiana University health doctor, who she said examined Natalia. So let me be clear. Up until this point, there's actually no proof that this supposed letter from this doctor is, first of all, legit, and second of all, not a fabrication or not a paid off doctor, right? So let's just keep that in mind. As of right now, to me, it doesn't seem like the parents or the adoptive parents have any proof that what they're saying is true, that this girl, Natalia, is actually an adult. The letter's date and authenticity remain unclear since the TV station was unable to get a confirmation when they showed it to Indiana University Health. A spokesman for the university hospital system refused to comment on the letter's provenance when reached by Oxygen.com, citing privacy concerns related to doctor-patient communications. According to the station, the letter characterizes Natalia's birth certificate as clearly inaccurate. Michael's doctor apparently writes in the letter that Natalia was well over 18 years old as of 2011, based on an examination of Natalia's teeth, adult, sexual development, and menstrual cycle. There is also a mention in the letter of Natalia being diagnosed with sociopathic personality disorder and alleges that she has a history of adoption fraud. This is a lot to process, mainly because I've rarely seen stories like this, and I've not heard of adoption fraud all that much. I'm not super informed on the topic. One thing I'm wondering is if there's any mental issues here, because what I'm saying is if she's actually 18, right? And she's pretending to be 10. Unless mentally she is underdeveloped, how would she be able to hide the fact that she has a brain that's 18? Does that make sense? So unless there's something going on where she's mentally underdeveloped, I don't know how an 18-year-old could pose as a 10-year-old and be okay with living as a 10-year-old. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm also confused about. According to the arrest affidavit obtained by Oxygen.com, the Barnetts allegedly decided to change Natalia's legal age and told her to tell others that while she looks young, she was actually 22. Christine's claims and the letter she sent to the station appear to be at odds with some of the allegations and Michael's own alleged admissions laid out in the affidavit. It suggests that an investigation began 5 years ago and that Tippecanoe County Sheriff's investigators followed up on September 5th by interviewing both parents. During questioning by the investigators, Michael allegedly admitted he and his wife had Natalia's age legally changed from 8 years old to 22. Despite this, investigators submit in the affidavit that both parents knew Natalia was actually a child. They arrived at this conclusion by dredging up medical records that show how the Barnetts had Natalia evaluated twice by a doctor at Peyton Manning Children's Hospital. The first doctor's evaluation took place in 2010. Back then, it was determined that Natalia was a minor child and estimated her age to be approximately 8 years old, according to the affidavit. Natalia was then brought in for a second evaluation only months before the Barnetts moved to Canada back in 2013. This time, the girl underwent a skeletal survey, and those results clearly stated that she was still a minor child, according to the affidavit. When questioned by investigators earlier this month, Michael allegedly believed Natalia was a minor child at the time the family moved out of the country. The Barnetts told investigators that they paid for Natalia's rent according to the affidavit. However, Michael allegedly informed authorities in the document that beyond the rent, they did not financially support Natalia after leaving Canada. This is a whole ass shit show. This is confusing. This is just the worst in terms of trying to figure out what's true. Let's summarize here for a second. According to the affidavit and actual medical records that we have proof of, Natalia went to the doctor 2 times, and those 2 times she was confirmed as a minor in 2010, then in 2013. She was confirmed as a minor and a child. Michael, the father, when they left, him and his wife, when they left to go to Canada, he still believed that Natalia was a child. So in his mind, he was leaving a child behind, being like, peace out, we're going to Canada, we'll pay your rent, but goodbye. How does that make sense? I'm sorry, but how is that just not child abandonment? Because to me, that's just child abandonment. I'm so confused. And the fact that they got her age legally changed from 8 to 22, to me says, at least on the father's side, as far as we know, if he believed he was leaving behind a child, but he had her age legally changed from 8 to 22, that to me seems like you want to abandon a child and then you don't want to be sued or get in trouble for it. Because if you abandon a 22-year-old, it's still shitty, mind you, but it's not illegal, whereas abandoning an 8-year-old is. So I'm wondering whether this whole age thing was just a scheme to get out of this. I don't know if they regretted adopting. I don't know if the child had more problems than they expected. But as of right now, with the information we have, the parents don't look good, especially because there's no confirmation of this other supposed letter that claims that Natalia is actually older. I'm wondering why the police hasn't brought in Natalia to a certified doctor that they trust and have the results sent directly to the police so there's no tampering possible. Like, surely dental records would be enough to kind of determine whether she's a whole-ass child or a whole-ass adult. In Michael's account, sometime in September 2013, the Barnetts stopped paying for Natalia's Lafayette, Indiana rental. The reason for this may be because the girl was evicted in May of that same year. Fortunately for Natalia, concerned neighbors intervened and looked after her, the court papers say. In 2016, Natalia moved away from Tippecanoe County to enroll in tuition-free classes at a high school for adults and older youth called Excel Center. A September 15th Facebook post by Christine Burnett insisted that she was sick and devastated from the idea of any of these charges and maintained that the charges were false. So that's the end of this article, and the more I read these articles, the more I'm confused because it seems like there's no consensus on anything. At least from the father's perspective, there's a linear story. It's an ugly story, mind you, and a story of child abandonment, but at least it's linear. From the mother's perspective, I don't understand because it seems like she's actually convinced that Natalia is an adult, but then also contradicts herself by saying that these charges are completely false, but she's not proving anything. I mean, she doesn't have any letter that actually proves that Natalia is an adult, so it's confusing to me that she'd be like, oh, it's clearly false. And it's like, well, how is it clearly false? There's no proof on your side. Okay, so this is the post that Christine Barnett posted on Facebook. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to be talking to anyone, but in response to the Washington Post photo of me supposedly being booked into jails, here's what is actually happening. I'm sick and devastated from the idea any of these charges and maintain that they are false charges. Friends and family, you decide if what you're reading is real or fake for yourselves. I'm having to come here to confirm I'm not arrested. My attorney states and has confirmed there is no warrant for my arrest. You want a mugshot, Washington Post, get the right girl, and also find an actual criminal. So as of right now, this case is a shit show. There's no clarity. There's no real understanding as to what is fact and what is misinformation or made up or paid for. Because as of now, the only thing we have is those 2 medical visits that stated that Natalia was effectively 8 and 11 in those 2 separate visits, and we just have the mother that's saying that it's adoption fraud with no real proof except for that letter that hasn't been confirmed to be real from another doctor. This is my thing. If the mother actually thought that she was part of an adoption scam, why didn't she go to any authorities? Why didn't she, contact the adoption services or even put it on social media if the adoption services went quiet and didn't answer her emails? Like, why was the solution here to leave the country? Even if both parents were entirely innocent, just leaving the scene and paying rent for Natalia, whether she's a child or an adult, is bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre, because why would you keep paying rent for someone who's scamming you if they're also an adult? If they're an adult, you'd think they could take care of themselves and you don't need to pay their rent. I understand maybe still feeling some kind of connection, but again, if you're so dead set that you're being scammed, why would you pay for their rent and just leave the country and have their age legally changed? The thing I can't grasp is if I were being scammed, I would be extremely angry and disappointed because my kindness or generosity or whatever you want to call it is being taken advantage of. The last thing that I would do for a scammer is, first of all, not tell any authorities, and second of all, just let them live in an apartment that I'm paying for and leave, and also have their age legally changed. It just stands to reason to me that before even having their age legally changed, you'd go to the authorities, you'd find some kind of official route to go down instead of just leaving. This reminds me of like a Shakespearean play with all the misunderstandings and too many conspiracy theories here. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think in the comments down below. I've looked at so many articles and they genuinely all seem to have the same amount of information, which is very little, but this story is so surreal that I thought it was some satirical type thing at first, not actually the reality we're living in. So yeah, sorry if this was messy, but I myself am entirely confused about what's going on. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. With the limited information that we have, what conclusion would you draw at this point until we know more? Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always. Let's get right into the fan art.